Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is Evan Thomas of ASMR Money Mentor. We're getting started here in just a moment, so I hope that you guys had a really great day. I hope that you are doing well with money this week, this month, this year, etc. Because I would hate to see you get to the end of the year and say that you did not do what you needed to do with money. Because unfortunately, that's what most people do. They get to the end of the year and they wonder what happened. It's just what most people do. So, in today's episode, I would like to talk about 4 ways or financial behaviors that have made me a millionaire. And I know you probably get tired of me saying that I'm a millionaire, but it's important. Especially for you guys as young people. I think it's important that you have a role model of somebody that was a financial train wreck in his 20s and finally got his act together in his 30s and then started to build wealth at age 40. And by the time he got to age 58, which is right now, he got to a $1.5 million net worth. And that includes $1,200,000 in investments, $100,000 in short-term reserves, and $200,000 in the value of this condo. Okay, so I just had to say that because many of you are new. And by the way, thank you for subscribing to my channel. I really appreciate it. I just, at the time of recording this, got to 1,500 subscribers, 1,500. So in a couple days, I'm going to be talking about how much money I've made so far on the channel. So come back and see me. I want to share that with you because I think it is going to be maybe enlightening to you as far as what I plan to do with the money and the income that I generate with this channel now and in the future as well. So back to today's episode. I was watching a YouTube channel just recently where I heard somebody say something that really resonated with me in a very big way. And I want you to write this down. I want this to be your motto. M-O-T-T-O, right? Yeah, motto. Or your way of thinking about life and about money in the future. Because I think if I would have heard this quote many years ago, it could have helped me even before I started to become smart with money. If I would have heard this quote, I think that I really would have snapped up and gotten a little bit wiser earlier than I actually did. And the quote is this: most people spend their life acting rich, while rich people spend their life acting poor. Now, that is so insightful to me. What it says is that most people, like maybe many of your friends, maybe your family, etc., they may be spending all of their money, their income that they're making today, which might be a lot of money. It might be $100,000, it might be more, and they're spending all of it. They're leasing cars for $600, $700, $800, $900, maybe $1,000 a month that they don't own. And because they have that income today, they're trying to act rich and they look rich. Because all you really need are things like a car, a home, clothes, and a vacation to try to convince people they're rich. I mean, think about it. If you lease a Mercedes and you live in a big home that you can barely afford, and you take a vacation or two a year that you put on social media, and you buy a bunch of clothes and jewelry, people would not know if you were truly rich or if you were just acting that way. And listen, these are things you guys know. This is not new. There's nothing I really say on my channel that is like mind-shattering in terms of, oh wow, except for this quote. Because I think it's so true. Most people are acting like they're rich. And what's more important than when you turn that around and you look at somebody like me that is rich, and by the way, we have to define rich and wealthy, which I've done before. Wealthy to me means that somebody can quit their job and the money they have produces income to pay for their expenses in their life. Rich, however, means that's 2 or 3 steps above that. Not only can I do that, but I can also buy the big homes, have those expensive cars that I buy outright, and maybe the homes that I buy outright, and I pay for expensive vacations in cash, and I pay for jewelry in cash and clothes in cash. Am I making sense? Okay. So, I am by no means rich. I don't want a big expensive home. I don't want expensive cars. Now let me rephrase that. If, for example, I had $20 million, then I would probably have those things. Although maybe not. I know a lot of people that have millions and millions of dollars that don't have those material items. So I'm not sure what I would do in that situation. And you know what? I don't have to worry about it. Because as you know, I am never going to get to $20 million. Nor do I truly want to get to $20 million. Unless my life went in a different direction that it did. So, I have spent my life when I was building wealth, and that's called the accumulation phase. So right now for you guys, you're thinking about building your wealth. That's accumulation. Eventually, you'll get to where I am, which is called distribution. I'm not there yet. But once I quit my job, which I plan to do next year, so stay tuned. I will share that with you. I'm gonna retire from corporate America. And I will then begin distributing. Is that a word? I will begin to take money off of the engine that I've created, and that, again, is called the distribution phase. So, while I was on the ascent of accumulation, I was being very frugal. I was acting poor. And now that I'm wealthy and I have the money, I still continue to act exactly the same. I have not changed one thing. Now that I have a $1.5 million net worth, than when I was $40,000 in a negative net worth. There is nothing different. I live in the same place that I've lived in for 21 years. I've only had 2 cars during that entire time. I'm on my 3rd right now, which is a Mazda CX-5 that I paid cash outright last year. But I'm not really acting any differently. And that's what I want you to understand, is that as you build your wealth, you've got to continue to act I am today. Number one, I spoke of it a couple days ago, early life lessons. Because I lost my way financially in my 20s, and I had my bankruptcy at age 29, that did, in fact, change who I was, financially speaking. I truly lost my way, just like maybe some of you have lost your way. I don't know your personal situation, only you know your personal situation. So if you're listening to me right now and you have lost your way, if you have a bunch of credit card debt, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you feel like nothing will get better, I'm here to tell you that it will get better, but you have to change your mindset and you have to change your behaviors in order to make that happen. And nobody is going to make you do anything. You're going to have to find it within yourself to make the changes. So it starts up here, obviously. You have to manifest and believe in yourself, and you have to see it in order to make that happen. And that is the first thing I thought of as far as these behaviors, is that when I had the bankruptcy, I still remember walking into my apartment after the court date and falling onto the floor in a heap of emotion. I was crying, I was upset, I felt like a failure. I said to myself, like, why is life treating me this way? Why can I not get ahead? I'm tired of not having money. I said all those things to myself, just like you might be talking to yourself as well. But if it wasn't for that lesson, I don't know that I could have turned things around. I had to reach an emotional bottom. You know, a lot of times you hear people talk about reaching an emotional bottom. That just means that you get to a point where you reach your lowest point. And once you get to that lowest point, you then decide and have the capacity to go back up. But until you get down to that level, change sometimes is not possible. So number one, that early life lesson changed who I was, financially speaking. Number two, for a financial behavior that made me a millionaire, is that I have tracked every penny on a build-a-budget spreadsheet. So, you guys probably know, some of you that have been with me for a while, that I do track every single penny on a spreadsheet on my computer. I've been doing it since 2005. If you're interested in learning about that, just go to my playlist and you'll see budgets. I have a whole episode on how you can build your budget in advance of the year. And then, in your mind, you start to spend the money before you actually spend it. And by the way, hopefully some of you saw my episodes just recently where I did some money mapping. Remember, money mapping means we're going to look at the entire year. What's our income? What are our expenses? Where are we? Are we thriving? Are we just surviving? We need to know that. We can't move forward until we know exactly where we are. So I learned early on that I would have to track every penny and build the budget. And I want you guys to look at this as fun. I know some of you are like, what? Budgeting is not fun. Well, I'm here to tell you budgeting can be fun. And the way that you can make it fun is that, again, you build it in advance. I want you to have a futuristic mindset, okay? You know, we're getting to the mid-2024, but before you know it, it's going to be August, September, October, November, and you'll want to be thinking about what your budget is for 2025. You need to start thinking about it like right now. I've already built my spreadsheet for 2025. Now, I don't know if I'm going to quit my job or not. I hope I do. So I have actually two spreadsheets right now. One is if I quit my job, and the other one is if I don't. The only difference is then, where does the income stream come from? Am I taking off of my investments? Am I spending my short-term reserves, depending on what goes on in the year in which I retire? Or am I spending income from my job? But as far as the expenses for 2025 for me is essentially the same, with the exception of the $68,000 that I invest and save as part of a line item, because remember, we need to track our saving and investing as an expense. That's a very important thing that you have to do. You must see saving as an expense in your budget. Okay. So I've got my two budgets for 2025 based on what happens. But just to get back to number 2 here, I would highly encourage all of you to sit down and map out your money and build your budget. And remember, what you do is you put the columns on your spreadsheet for the number of months: January, February, March, April, May, etc. You put the dollar amounts in those cells on the build a budget, and then once it's complete, you save it and you say, okay, there's my budget, I'm done. And then as you spend money from the Excel document, you deduct it and you build in a macro so that it nets to 0 at the bottom of your spreadsheet. So you move the money from up here. Let's say you go to the grocery store, you spend $100. You move it down here to expenses paid. But the macro is built so that it nets to 0. And if it nets to 0, that means throughout the year you can never go wrong. You may need to borrow money from other buckets, which is fine. But the only way in order to see that is to make sure that you spend from the budget on the spreadsheet so that it continually nets to 0 as you go throughout the year. So number 2, make sure that you track every penny. Number 3 for the financial behaviors that made me a millionaire. Number 3 is things last longer than we think. Things last longer than we think. I want to talk a little bit about my condo redesigns. You guys know I've had my condo for 21 years. There were times where I wanted to sell, I wanted to buy a bigger place, I wanted a separate room for an office. Now look at this, I'm in a 1-bedroom condo. This is my desk. I'm just fine. Would it have been nice to have a second room for an office? Of course. But did I really need it, or did I just want it? I just want it. Now what's really funny is the way that you keep yourself in check for things lasting longer than you think is to practice and do role plays with yourself. For example, last week I was on what I call a staycation, and I really started thinking, you know what, Evan, maybe you should move. Maybe you should get a bigger place. Maybe you should sell, go somewhere else. And then I stopped and I said, wait a minute. Why are these feelings surfacing? Do I need to get rid of something? Do I need to practice minimalism? Because the space that I live in is fine. I don't need more space. Maybe I need less stuff. So one thing I did was I moved the desk into the living room, and I opened up the space to help in my mind see that it is a large space, and that when you retire, maybe you can redesign the living space. Maybe get rid of the desk. Maybe I don't need the desk. We'll see. going to tell us things like that all the time. And as you guys get into your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever age you are, you're going to have to stop and not let those types of things ruin your capacity to build wealth. Because that's what everybody does, and I don't want you guys to be one of those people. I want you to get to a point where you have 300,000, 500,000, 700,000, maybe $1 million someday. It all depends on your capacity for income. Like, how much money are you going to make in the future? How well can you keep your expenses down? How high can you get your savings rate? And the higher your savings rate, the greater your capacity to get to $1 million or whatever dollar amount you want to get to in either a short amount of time or a longer amount of time. What's great for you guys, as you know, is you have time on your side. Okay, so I went off on a little tangent, but number 3 for the ways that the financial behaviors to help me get to $1 million status is we have to convince ourselves that things last longer than we think. And number 4, the fourth thing that I learned through the years that helped me become a millionaire is that I think that we all need to take the time to have no thoughts whatsoever, so that we can concentrate on what's really important to us, especially from a financial standpoint. I think I produced an episode just recently where I talked about an article that I have, and I'm going to show it to you right now. It's called Rehumanize Yourself. This piece of paper that I just showed you, speaking of things last longer than you think, is from a magazine from 2003. So, things last longer than we think. It's a piece of paper, and I still have it. So do you think you can keep your car 3 more years rather than selling it and buying a new one? Of course you can, in most cases. Understand? So don't think that because your car is old, you have to get rid of it and get something new. I have pieces of paper that are older than that. Okay. But this article, I kept it because I like to look at it once a year almost, and I like to rehumanize myself. And in the article, even though it's written from a health perspective, it was in a fitness magazine, you can also think about it in terms of your finances as well. And it talks about how a healthy mind and a healthy body is one that involves strength and resistance training, flexibility, cardiovascular conditioning, and all these different things that we have to have a healthy, fit body. And I remember thinking,